Hello, and welcome to the Mama and a Manse podcast. I am Christy, and I just want to welcome all new and returning visitors to my channel. This is a podcast about knitting and a little bit of spinning, a tiny bit about my life as a pastor's wife in Nebraska, raising 5 kids, and mostly knitting. So, let's just jump right into it. So my first finished object, I did finish 3 things in 3 days since I saw you last, and I'm pretty stoked about all of them. The first thing is my Parisian Dreams sweater. It is by Knitting Expat, and it is out of, excuse my reach, House of a la Mode, in their 80/20 fingering weight, the Huntsman colorway. Yeah, I said 80/20, right? So, House of a la Mode, I got this at Stephen B's store when we went up to Minneapolis for VKL. So, I did not swatch. I did use I had 5 skeins. I used the suggested needle, which was a US 4, and I made the 3rd size, which should have given me about 4 inches of positive ease, but the length was much less, and so I did size 4 length, which thank God I did, because having not swatched, the sweater actually, I am normally a looser knitter, and it came out smaller than I expected. So it's a good thing that I did do the extra length. The neckline is pretty good. It does have a shoulder seam here, and on me it tends to roll to the back. I have I'm going to adjust this because my head is getting cut off. I have super bad posture, and so I don't know if that roll to the back is what it's supposed to do, or whether it's because my shoulders are most often slumped forward, and so it just kind of naturally gravitates back. When it gets very far back, then this neckline does touch my neck, and that's a little bit obnoxious, so I do find myself pulling on it a little bit. But I'm going to attempt to pop myself up on this cushion so I can show a little bit more of it. And there went the yarn that I was wanting to show you later. And now I'm rolling all over the place. Oh, super professional. So this is the sweater. It is long enough. I probably would have liked a little bit more length. I don't know. That's so attractive, and it doesn't work very good. I normally would wear some leggings, and I don't feel that it goes quite far enough. Ugh. I feel like I'm just wallowing around. This is not working. The length of the sleeves is really good. I did do those. I didn't add a lot of length. I kind of guesstimated to where I wanted them. In hers, they ended right at her, it's not a knuckle bone, but like the wrist bone right there. And I did not want that. My cuffs do flare out a little bit because I did Jenny's stretchy bind off, but also they are around where my hands go out, and I have worn it quite a bit since I finished it, and I've pushed the sleeves up a few times. You can kind of tell where my elbows normally are. The side seam of the sleeve did come down far enough, like I wanted it to. And I can tell where I was not alternating skeins. But even when I did alternate, I could see different spots, particularly on the back, but I don't know how successful I would be in trying to show you that. Where there were less blue spots. I don't think you can really tell that. There were less blue spots in some areas even though it is alternating. And so you can kind of tell where there's different things. I'm going to lean down really quick. I apologize, to grab the yarn that I knocked off while wallering around. So it did come out a little bit smaller. That is not a problem of the pattern. I did not swatch. What happened was on Black Friday, I was talking to Allison, who is Lofty Loops, and she was starting her sweater that she had bought House of Alamode at Stephen B's during VKO. Her sweater, and she was making a pavement. And so then I decided to start mine, and we made it a little bit of a competition, which I totally won. But I kind of came home after Black Friday and immediately cast it on. So it came out smaller than I probably would have liked, but it's completely fine. Like, I have plenty of space. I would have maybe wanted it a little bit longer. Thank God I did not go with the shorter size. But those 5 skeins, it didn't use very much yarn. So this is an entire skein. All of this together is 179 grams. So I have almost 2 skeins left. So the sweater did not take nearly as much yarn as I expected. So I think that I'm going to make myself a pair of socks and then trade the other one to Allison so she can also make a pair of socks. I would recommend this sweater. It is super comfortable. I think it's cute. When it first came out, I wasn't so sure because I'm not a big chevron person, but I really like how it looks on me. And the color is a tan color, which I usually stay away from, but I really love it, and those little pops of blue are beautiful. They did come out in my wash water pretty badly, but it didn't seem to affect their brightness or kind of latch on anywhere else, so that was good. Immediately after podcasting last time, I begged my sweet husband to go tromping through the blizzard and start uploading my podcast without editing. And so he did that, and I decided, you know what, I can finish these 2 shawls that I showed last time. However, I did not finish either of them because I ran into problems. So I shared about the Joy shawl last time, and I had made it into the lace, but knew that I didn't have enough to finish it. So, no. I was to the lace, and then knitted about halfway into the lace and was like, there's no way I'm gonna make it. I did find the band for the Hanson's hand dyed. It is their Bounce Sock 8020 and the colorway Woodstock. This is what I ended up having left. So I got about halfway through the lace section and couldn't figure out what to do. And so I put it down. And then I picked up the bulky shawl that I also showed you, that I was to where the pattern said to go as far as like the main body before you do the lace border. And I was going through yarn much too quickly on that, and I got a little bit into the lace and I started weighing how much it was taking for each row, and there was no way that I was going to be able to make it all the way. So I ended up putting both of them down because I thought that I could get them all done and have them as completed objects, and they were both running out of yarn and I was going to have to do something about them. All that to say, I came back to them later on and decided I needed to do something with them. So for the Joy shawl, and also last week last podcast, it was 2 weeks ago, I shared that this particular shawl was in remembrance of a baby that she lost to miscarriage, Sophia Talley, who is the drunk knitter, and kind of shared some of my experiences, and a few of my friends reached out, like knitter friends, and said, you know what, me too. And there's so much healing in sharing that. So that was special about this. So I was making it in this crazy rainbow color because it's happy and I needed some rainbows. And there are tons of colors, but they're very specific colors. There's no neutral to this. And so I was having a hard time finding a plain color that could go with this. And I knew a variegated would not. So I searched through my stash and I eventually came up with a skein that I bought when I was in Arizona last fall. I bought it at Tempe Yarn, but it's Desert Bloom Yarns in the Sonita Cactus colorway. It's their luxury 70% merino, 20% silk, 10% cashmere. And I stuck in a lifeline and ripped back the lace that I had done and completed my shawl. I am super happy with how this came out. This green, I felt like really it kind of toned down the crazy of the rainbow. Not that I'm against crazy rainbows, but I think that it made it more wearable. And it is a beautiful green that really, really shows off this pattern, which is kind of a leaf pattern. And so the green seemed kind of like the perfect thing. Now, this shawl also has optional tassels on the end. And it is a like semicircle shawl. And so it's not incredibly long to be able to wrap these edges. And so it just shows you can put little tassels on the end. And I'm thinking about doing that because I think it would give it a little bit of weight. It'd give a little bit more weight to the ends. And kind of help them to stay up on top and over my shoulders, because then the tassels would be like right here. Of course, then they'd be kind of bouncing off my boobs, so I'm not sure. But I was super happy with how this turned out, and I think it looks fantastic. I'm so happy to have that. So I am still kind of trying to decide. I am leaning towards doing the tassels, but I'm not sure whether I should do them in the green or the rainbow. So that's kind of why it doesn't have them yet. And because I've not made tassels before, and I don't know if it's going to be a pain in the butt. So I would certainly recommend that pattern. There were a few things that, there were a few places that if I had had, some stitch counts, it might have made it a little bit clearer and I would have understood exactly what to do, maybe a little bit better, or been able to figure out where I was. But other than that, the pattern was really great, and I think it turned out beautifully. Set that over there out of the way. So then the other shawl that I was working on, I had told you about before, and it was the Baby Alpaca Grande Tweed from Plymouth Yard. 90% baby alpaca, 7% acrylic, 3% rayon. And I had bought three skeins of this when I was in Rogersville at One City Market. It was a souvenir yarn, and as I said, I was really running out of yarn, and I just did not think that I could make it all the way. But when I would measure, when I was weighing, one time it would say it was taking 20 grams and one time 11. So I'm I don't think that my scale is getting right on, and so I'm going to go as far as I can and then decide. Even if I have to rip it all out. then I'll do that. So I went until I had this much left, and I was at the beginning of knit row, and I did not think that this would be enough to do the knit row and the purl back, because I obviously did not want to join another color on the purl row, because then the blips would show. This is the Decemberists shawl by Melanie Burk. It's a triangular shawl, and it's supposed to be in super bulky, but this yarn is really only bulky. It might be between bulky and super bulky, but it's not super bulky. So I started out having a problem anyway. But I think, I looked through my stash, and I think I actually might have bought this yarn to help me with this shawl once I realized that it was not enough and the wrong weight. This is Cascade Yarns 128 Superwash, and they don't really have colors, but it's this tealy green color. So I was hoping to just do the cast on it possibly, or the bind off, and as I said, I was at the beginning of a knit row and could not, I really did not think that I could make it all the way down and back with that. So I went ahead, and the last pattern row and the last purl row, and then the bind off I did in the green. And here it is. I can't tell. So this shawl is so drapey and soft, and quite honestly, I really, really love that greenish border. I think it just gives it an extra kick. It will go with anything. I don't think it's too much. I was worried about that patterned row being in a different color because I was afraid it would look like I had run out of yarn and not that I was making a design element. And sorry, that one piece of hair does not want to stay. I've got curly girl problems. I think it adds a little kick. It looks gorgeous and beautiful, and quite honestly, I was also worried that it was going to come out small and not be very awesome, and it definitely did not do that. It is a big, comfy, cozy shawl. I had talked about how it was shedding like prickly hairs when I was knitting it, and now that it's been washed, I don't feel any of that at all. It's completely soft and squishy and doesn't bother me at all. So, those were the 3 things that I finished last weekend, actually. Got them all blocked because my husband did it, which was amazing. Okay, I need to clear, whoops, now I'm throwing stuff on the floor. Okay, let's see, where should we go next? So a couple of my other projects that you've seen before. This is the Dying Arts that I had shown you before. These socks, I have popped my heels into both of them, and I've started going up the leg. I haven't knit on these very much because I was doing so many other things. As you can tell, they have started to fade. I am, compared to the toe, this already just above the heel. Even the heel was starting to get some lighter spots, you can tell. But especially up here, it's much lighter than it was down here. And this one is starting to have some portions that have more intense coloring. So I do still feel like it's going to kind of fade into being the same thing across the top when I get to the cuffs. I am intending these to be boot height, knee height, however far they go, which is why I did them toe up. Well, it's my preferred way anyway, but then that way I can just knit until I'm all the way to the top. I do think that they'll be similar enough at the cuff because they'll both be at the very center of the skein that I won't have any worries about them showing and looking like I'm wearing two different socks. It technically does not bother me for the socks to be different. I am disappointed that they were not, you know, super crazy like this, because that's why I bought the skein, because it looked like this in the skeined up. But gauging from my Christmas socks, I feel like I could have started doing the increases a little bit earlier than I did. So I have a marker in here from how far it is from the heel, so I can kind of count and probably start sticking those in a few rows earlier than I did, but I'm just going to keep going on these. I knit on them. I got the heels in and then I put them down for a while and did a little bit during our last foster care class. So those are just kind of my ongoing rainbow socks. Then the other whip that you have seen before is my puntilla sweater. So this is a Hohi Locatelli pattern, and it has this little lace detail on the cuffs and the bottom. And I am using Manos del Uruguay. Oh, I do have the colors in here. So I am using the Peacock Plume, which is the blue, and the silver Tease It, but the color that I've shown you for that gray, it's actually the lighter gray. Because I bought this sweater so that the gray that I'm barely using anything for that little lace detail can be used in a Waiting for Rain shawl. And it will be the lace sections. Well, it's supposed to be the light color that's the lace sections and the edging of the sweater. Anyway, so I kind of went to town on this since the last time that you saw it. When I showed it to you, I was at this marker right up here, and I have completed the body. So the next step is sleeves. I am not a fan of sleeves. When I started doing this one, I had this one and both of these to do, and the thought of 3 sleeves was just awful. So I did the body very quickly and then have put it down and haven't picked it back up for about a week now. But I did decide, you know, I can do 1 sleeve, and so I did 1 sleeve. So I think that this one probably needs to be worked on some more once I have some of my priority knitting done and get some sleeves in it. Then of course there's the collar and then putting the lace. This up here where it has this lot of line, that's where where things were being alternated. And then further down, it wasn't. So, I'm not really sure which I prefer. I don't know how much it'll really like show a lot once it's on my body either. And I have this left of the 3rd skein. No, I had 3. Of the 2nd skein and all of the 3rd. Is that right? I think so. Yeah. So this one does look kind of greener, but I think that it's enough to do both sleeves. So I'm only going to do the one color for the sleeves, because then they will be the same color, because I don't know that this is going to make it anywhere. They'll be consistently the same color, and also it means I don't have to alternate on a sleeve, and I think that that was part of the reason that I dreaded doing the sleeves on this one so much, is because I was alternating and it was just literally awful, and I don't know what this mess of a knot is in this yarn. And now there's like an actual knot. Oh, nope, there we go. So I feel like it's maybe a little bit greener, but I'm okay with that as long as, you know, the sleeves kind of are consistent. This has been living in my Knit's Best Thing poinsettia bag. I need some more like super sweater sized bags, because this is kind of getting shoved a little bit. Okay. Those are my two whips that I have previously shown you. So the next thing that I grabbed was, I had picked up some Lotus from Lofty Loops. This is in her Pure Base, which is a 3-ply. And it's come unraveled. And I was intending for the Lotus to be with Abyss, and oh my goodness, everything is... I got all my podcast stuff out and put it on the couch in preparation for today, and then like the kids jumped all over it, so everything's like twisted and unraveled. So this is the Lotus colorway, and I got some Abyss from her, and I did get 2 skeins because, as I had mentioned back when I was talking about my Make 9, the pattern says at the top of it that you can use 1 skein of speckle and 1 skein of tonal. However, it is a liar, because you need 701 yards of the contrast color. And so the colors I intended for this, one of them is one that she doesn't really do anymore, the solid one. And so we just decided to completely change it. So this is from my Make 9. It's the Speckle Tonic by Marianne Mace. And I started it, and I apologize, it's not on very big cords. But here's the top. And I've done a little bit of the first lace section. And it has kind of this like eyelet detail up at top. In the pattern, I feel like this looks a lot deeper, but I think that this yarn is going to really relax when I block it. But it's super pretty. The lace is not complicated at all, but it is something that I can't really do when there's a whole bunch of kids running around, or I have to keep putting it down or anything like that. So I haven't worked on it in a few days, but that is going, and that is my first thing off of my Make 9, so I'm pretty excited that I'm working on that. And of course the Abyss, I had shown you the Lotus before, but the Abyss was new. A new acquisition, and it's on her Glitz, which is 75% merino, 20 nylon, and 5 silver stellina. So it is sparkly. It's not showing up right now, I think because of the weather, but it does when I'm knitting it up. So it'll be this darker color with a little bit of sparkle in the lace, and I'm just really excited about that. Then I feel like I've been yammering for a long time. I guess it's only been 30 minutes. Seems like longer. So then the next thing I did was decide I needed to do another one. So this is Hookah Days by Susanna Winter, who is Talvi Knits. And it is a Aran weight sweater. It has this back detail with this like snowflake lace, and the front is just complete plain stockinette. It is made out of Drops Air, a medium thick blow yarn made of baby alpaca and merino wool. So it is 65% alpaca, 28% polyamide, and 7% wool. It is a super, super cheap yarn, but I so far have not had any problems with it. It is a little bit hard when you need to tink back, which I have had to do a few times, because it's kind of hairy and those hairs want to stick to each other. So I'm doing mine in a navy. It actually looks more navy on this picture than it does in real life. It's a little more, it's like a light navy. I don't even know how to describe it, but it has a brighter blue to it than I would normally say of a navy. But it is a dark blue. And you start with a provisional cast on, so that's why I have a bajillion cords in it. This one up here is my provisional cast on. Yeah. And it is on super teeny tiny needles because I don't know where any of my cords are. Maybe it's because I have 8 million projects going. But I feel like not all of them should be in projects right now. And I just don't know where they are. But so here's a whole bunch of the lace. I have my sleeves on hold. And I am probably about an inch past the armpit. And after much deliberation, well, and next time you see this, it's not going to be on these little tiny needles, because I got on Amazon and I bought more cords because I'm having this problem a lot where I cannot find a cord size that I needed. So I did go ahead and buy 2 for making 40-inch and 2 for making 32, because those are what I tend to use a lot for both shawls and sweaters. So that was another acquisition I had this week. Now I need to look back to be able to tell you what I decided. I also did not swatch for this. Do not call the police, the knitting police, on me. It calls for a size 8. That is what I'm using. And I am making the size large. However, I decided that I am not making the size large sleeves. I'm using the medium size sleeves. Let me see if I can find a picture of her in here with it on. It says it's supposed to have I can't remember. It's supposed to have 3 inches of positive ease, and I have non-muscular arms. So here is kind of a picture with her sleeves, and I did not feel like she had 3 or 4 inches of positive ease in those sleeves. Yes, they're not fitting, but they're not that loose, and they're not really huge and sloppy, which is what I was kind of worried. In a heavy sweater like this, I feel like the sleeves need to fit a little bit more to make it look like it's supposed to look like this, and I'm not just like wearing a maternity shirt. So the medium upper arm is 13 3/4, and the large was 15 3/4. So that was a pretty big jump in between. and my upper arm was only like 12. So it was going to be almost 4 inches of positive ease on my arm, which is more than I had on the body. And so I decided to do the medium size. So what I did was, when I was to the point of continuing the raglan increases in the round, I went ahead and stopped the sleeve increases 2 rows, 2 repeats before I stopped like the body increases. And so I just wasn't doing them on the sleeves anymore because it was only 4 inches for each, or 4 stitches for each sleeve. But it makes, I mean, if it makes 2 inches of difference, that is a lot. I had thought about doing it where you cast on, but that would have messed up my body numbers, so I did not. But anyway, so this is just going to be a nice, comfortable sweater to have. It has a scoop neck, if you can kind of tell. But truthfully, it's kind of dark to see and on size 24-inch cable, so it's pretty scrunched up. The lace is pretty intuitive. I'm not seeing that I've had any problems with it. It does have this kind of nice like eyelet detail, which is what you're using to do your raglan increases on here, and I thought it worked out pretty nice. It's very soft yarn. I haven't found any knots. It hasn't broken on me, like nothing like that. And I want to say that for shipping and the yarn, it was either like $36 or like $42. Yeah. So this will by far be the cheapest sweater I've ever made, but I think it's going to be comfy and pretty. And that's important. And it just moved into my Creative Garage flamingo bag like today. Because it didn't have a home yet. And I just kicked the yarn from my Parisian Dreams out of it. Okay. So that was my other new cast on. Put the yarn label back in there. Then my other finished object was I finally finished my brioche hat. I did the increases yesterday, and this is also out of Lofty Loops. The glitz is on the front, the sock is the blue that is the background. When I was wanting to learn how to brioche, I could not find a hat pattern that I liked, and so this was technically, though I finished my What the Fade since then, this was technically my second project in brioche. But it is a reversible hat. I don't have my ends woven in yet, but if you weave them in properly, then you would be able to. I also have not blocked it. But here are my increases. It just kind of crosses over, and they're a little bit offset. Right now I have a couple of testers working on this, and I am also working on another one of those, because when I first started writing the decreases, I thought I was going to do them a different way as far as like how to say it in the pattern, and then when I was trying to write it and had decided that's not the way that it's going to work the best, I had a hard time translating it. So I'm actually trying to beat the testers to the decreases so I can make sure my numbers are correct. But I decided to make this one out of the MCN sock base from Lofty Loops. It's an 80-10-10, and this colorway is Mama Nuka, and it's this like fluorescent minty green, and it is going with the Dashing Through the Snow colorway from her collaboration with Yarn Monster and Little Bitty Delights. and it has been living in the Yarn Monster bag that matches since last night. I cast it on last night. It's not been there that long. But that's where the other hat was, so. So here's what I have done so far. It's just a little bit of brioche. At first I was afraid this Mamanuka color was not gonna like recede into the background at all, but it is kind of starting to back down a little bit now that there's a little bit more of the white color on there. That is also a glitz base, but I'm going to make this one more of a slouchy version so that we have the different examples. Allison is also knitting. She's one of my test knitters. Our other roommate Julia is as well. So I'm really looking forward to having them test knit, get everything, it's like in pattern form. I just have to make sure the numbers are right. And I'm very much looking forward to having this to have as a sample for her show, and also to have my first pattern for sale on Ravelry. But I'm pretty stoked that I finished it, and also just really happy that I learned how to brioche, because brioche is the best thing in the world. I love it. I need to block that also and get like gauge information, but I specifically said in the pattern, you don't have to block. You don't have to gauge swatch for a hat unless you just like super want to. I had 2 other acquisitions during this week. I got 2 skeins of yarn from Onyx Fiber Arts, and the 2 that I picked out kind of go together, but this one is Playdate. And then the other one, this one's called Sprinkle City. And that's what I call speckles, so I really appreciated that name. I call them sprinkles. I am not super sure yet what I'm going to do with these. I had kind of thought about just making 2 pairs of socks and making these the heels and toes of this one, and then vice versa, because I do think like the speckle part of them really go together. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. These are 75-25. Obviously fingering weight. Yeah, both of them are. And I did find Onyx on Instagram, but her shop is on Etsy. So I'm excited to figure out what to do with those pretty babies. And then there was spinning. So the last time I showed you my first attempt on the wheel and how not great I am at spinning. But after the podcast last time, I decided, well, I need to get these plied up because I can't move on until I do. So I did go ahead and ply the one that was like really big and not very well spun. Not that anything was well spun, let's be honest. Just a second. I had decided to chain ply, and that was quite honestly a nightmare. The Lazy Kate is not tensioned, and so it was flying off of there and then twisting on itself, and the 3-ply was making it, the yarn, too big around to go through the orifice. So I was having to like self-feed it through, like it wouldn't take it up. So it was pretty miserable, but I did make something that sort of resembles yarn a little bit. And of course you have this fun mess at the end. Wait. Now I can't really tell the difference, but yeah, this is the other one. So then the second one, what I did was I took like a piece of cloth and wrapped it around the pin on the Lazy Kate, and then used a binder clip on the pen from the outside so that it would kind of like smush it, and so it wouldn't just roll super fast. And that did help quite a bit. This one was overspun in a lot of places, and so that didn't really come out. So, I mean, you can still see it in some places. But this was quite a bit smaller. There were only like a couple spots, like probably right there, that I had to help it through the orifice. This is my tie. So it's still probably not like super usable yarn, and I didn't even bother looking to see what the yardage is. But I did make yarn. Like, an accomplishment is an accomplishment, even though I suck at it. So then I had showed you last week, I had that one braid that I was splitting up into kind of do it in a gradient. And I did half of it. The other half is still in here. This is the English Rose from Spindle, Shuttle, and Needle. And that's in Stromsburg, Nebraska. And she also is online and maybe Etsy too. What is that? So, I've only done half of it, but here is my bobbin. And I wanted to have it so that like there was like white, green, and purple showing, but there was more purple, I think, than I expected. And so the white is completely covered up. But I did kind of figure out a little bit how to do backwards draft, and that was helping somewhat. I had spread it out like I'd showed you last week, so it's kind of like a sheet instead of a tiny piece, and then I tore those into smaller pieces like this, whereas before I was just tearing them into the tiniest pieces I could. And I was able to do a little bit of backwards drafting. I was having a problem with going back and forth between short forward draw and the backwards draft, but I felt like this was way, way, way more consistent and small. Like, there's a few places where it's a little bit bigger, but really, I mean, it is amazingly better than the one before. And I don't really see any of those like super overspun spots like I was getting before. So I'm pretty happy with that, and I am planning to two-ply this. So I kind of did it in a gradient, and I will just put them together with the other half. I weighed it out and kind of grabbed a few pieces off of the other one to try to make them as even as possible. But I have noticed that spinning, as I mentioned earlier, I have really bad posture, and I really try to have good posture while spinning, but that actually hurts my back. So I don't know if it's my bad posture or it's trying to force myself to have good posture that makes my back hurt so bad, but I couldn't hardly move after spinning this. So, and that was with taking breaks. I wasn't being ridiculous, but it just, standing for a long time or trying to sit up straight or anything like that kind of bugs my back anyway. So I am pretty excited about this. I mean, I know that it's not perfect, but I feel like this is an accomplishment, and I did a pretty good job of getting what I wanted. So spinning is going a little tiny bit better, but I haven't done it any since, I can't remember if it was the day I podcasted or the next day, but it was one or the other. So it's been about 2 weeks, and I just haven't gotten to the other half yet. So that is all of the yarn, all of the projects, all of the things. As far as life around these parts, we made it through the blizzard that I was talking about the last podcast without losing power. And so that was unusual, but also a very welcome thing. And we ended up, I don't even know how much we got, but church got canceled, and Monday school was canceled still. And the problem with that blizzard was they got the roads cleaned up, but then because it was -0 Fahrenheit every single day, it stayed so cold that there was no melt at all. Because usually, like, the snow will get kind of a little bit of a crust on the top, and it is, you know, it stays put. But it was freezing cold, like, ridiculous. We had wind chill advisories? Yeah, advisories, because it was 25 to 30 degrees below zero. Wind chills. And that kept it really powdery and able to move. And so for the entire week and the next week, it just kept blowing over the roads, and they were getting snowpacked, and then they would scoop them, and even on the highway you get like 2 inches of snow, and then they were constantly snow plowing it like every single day. We did have another snowstorm last weekend, and again, no, we were supposed to get one a couple days ago and we didn't. Today it has rained and snowed, but
we got 4 inches Thursday.
Oh yeah, we got 4 inches of snow on Thursday. It rained a little bit, and then it snowed for a while, and now it's not really doing anything, but there's so much snow on the ground that, like, when it all starts melting, it's just gonna be a pond. There's a pond out in our road right now because there's just water. But really, it doesn't seem like the rain got rid of that much snow, because I figured if it was gonna rain, and it wasn't like, it was like big, like spring rain, not that like tiny little icy stuff, but it doesn't seem like it really got rid of much. We finished up our foster care class this week. It was our last class, and so that's over with. I finished my local substitute certification class, and so that's done, and I'm just waiting for my transcripts to get there so that I can get my permit. And then Emma, my oldest daughter's teacher, won Milken Foundation Award, which they're calling the Oscars of knitting.
Teaching.
Yeah, teaching, not knitting. She does knit, though. Anyway, so they had a surprise ceremony. It's like a super secret surprise thing. And was it Monday or Tuesday? Whatever day it was that they had this, my daughter was selected to hold one of the signs. And so she ended up on the website for the news channel and the newspaper and the town newspaper, and also on the front page of the Omaha World-Herald. Right there, that's Lizzie. Emma's teacher won $25,000 along with this award, so it was a pretty huge deal. She was the only teacher in Nebraska to receive the award, and I think there were 33 or 34 teachers around the country that got it. But so she's also in the Fremont paper, which is the little town that's 20 miles from us, and our paper, it has it, but she's not in it. She was just on their Facebook. But anyways, this picture was on the front page of the Omaha World-Herald, which is the big city when you're from Nebraska. And I think that's about it. If you have anything that you would like to know about the podcast, or subjects you would like me to cover, or anything like that, go ahead and go over to the Ravelry group. It is linked down below, and ask away. If there's anything that I forgot to mention, you can ask that as well. I will probably be back next week or the next week after. It seems like that is kind of going into like a 2-week routine, even though I've tried to do it every week. Hasn't worked out the greatest. But I really want to thank you for spending time with me today. I hope that you have enjoyed our time together. And if you have, please like and subscribe. It helps the podcast to kind of get out there. And I think that's it. I know that we should be well into spring, and it's still snowing, and there's so much snow behind my phone outside. So I hope that you are warm. I know that some of the podcasts that I have been watching, Nadira Tani lives in Florida, and she's like podcasting outside, and there's like mosquitoes, and she's like staying out of the sun because it's too hot. And the 100 Projects is in California, and you know, she's talking about being barefoot in the grass in her backyard, and that her bees are starting to do things again, and there's flowers blooming, and I'm just like, I can't even imagine. Those are so... It's so otherworldly to me that right now, people in our country have what to me is summertime. And we have 12 inches of snow and negative wind chills. So, I don't know. I am looking forward to spring. I'm sure if you are anywhere in the north that you are too. And I just hope that it comes for all of us soon. Have a happy weekend, and I will see you soon. Bye.